And I would like to verify that we have a quorum. We have a quorum. And today we have the pledges ahead. We will do that. I might go ahead and make an announcement. I mean, I think I need to tell everybody. Mr. Law will not be here today. He is ill, and neither will Ms. Burgess. She's ill too. We know that, yeah, the illness is going through. It's the virus or the flu, and so we know that. I mean, I know a lot of people, I'm sure you do too, and we're all aware that what's going on is in the news even. So they will not be attending today. All right, would you stand with me?
Madam Chair, I think he's getting it. We got a little ringing in the audio. Feel like we're getting ready to, you got it? Okay. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
JR, would you lead the pledge today?
Sure, definitely will. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the Texas flag.
On
the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Oh, would you remain standing while we have our invocation? And today, our invocation is going to be given by Reverend Howard Madison, the Associate Minister of Friendship Baptist Church in Mesquite, and he is also TAD Senior Operations Specialist. Reverend Madison. Oh, thank you.
Shall we bow in prayer? Heavenly Father, we do thank you, Lord, for your goodness and grace. Thank you for your mercy. Lord, we thank you for how that you've kept us and how that you've met our every need. Lord, we thank you for this morning in which the board here will participate in trying to seek the good for those of us who live in Tarrant County. Bless each and every one. Give us wisdom and understanding. Lord, we ask that you give us what we need to accomplish the task that you've asked us to accomplish. Thank you, Lord. We realize that this is a governing process that allows us to seek the good for our citizens as well as bring equality to all. Bless us and keep us. We thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. So we are down now to recognition of visitors, public hearing, public comment. I think I have everyone's card. First on the list is George Dodson. Morning, Mr. Dodson. Council member.
Good morning. As the board knows, I'm a councilman from the city of Colleyville. I come before you today to share some critical issues that must be resolved dealing with lack of transparency, trust between the TAD board of directors and the taxpaying public. First, Director Rich Diot mentioned last board meeting that the board had received and reviewed the full report of the Austin Law Firm investigation concerning Mr. Crouch and Mr. Armstrong, and that it contains specific information that should be shared not only with the public, but also with the district attorney to determine if laws are broken by the TAD administration. And also, if you are not aware, Mr. Armstrong tried to take away Mr. Crouch's career. I'm asking today that why the board has not agreed to share the full report, so the public can determine for themselves whether we want to allow the TAD administration to continue to operate as they have in the past. Our taxes paid at least $30,000 for the investigation and report. As a councilman, I am disgusted that the board believes tax entities and citizens are too stupid to see and understand the entire details of the report. What has the board done other than give Mr. Law and Mr. Armstrong 2-week vacations? What about Chandler Crouch? Has the board or Mr. Law done anything to contact him to correct what was done to him? This board, truly a do-nothing organization that's only here to protect Mr. Law and his associates from any oversight by outside entities. Oh, by the way, this law firm was not selected by the board. It was selected by Mr. Law to investigate himself and his organization's operations. This is totally backward, the board should have selected the firm without interference from Mr. Law or Mr. Armstrong. Second, why is the appointment of agents policy still not on the agenda for today's meeting? Multiple board members agreed two meetings ago that it should be on last meeting's agenda, but the chairperson decided she didn't want it on there, so it was not on the last or today's agenda. If there's a problem with the policy, it should be an item for the board to discuss and resolve. Does the board have the policy that two members can force an agenda item by their agreement and not be overridden by the chairman? This is typical for most government boards that I'm aware of, and our city, in fact, has a similar policy. Does the board really have a set of rules? It seems like a lot of things happen here, and they're overruled by the chairperson. Third, the board has never implemented a review of the appraisal software that the board approved almost 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. I can't imagine why the board would not want an independent review of the software and the processes and procedures used for appraisals. If you truly expect the public to believe CAD appraisals, the very least you should do for transparency is continue to do that review. That is, unless you have zero intent for doing anything positive to show how TAD operates and the organization's management is open for review by outside experts. I still believe that our city is not getting the proper services from TAD, and I've reported that to our council. I've been part of the change agent on the team for our city council that's dramatically improved the efficiency and effectiveness of Colleyville's city's operation. We didn't improve it by approving everything the city manager asked us to do. In fact, we changed not only the city manager, but also so that we could make the other changes happen. The city manager was doing things extremely wrong, and we corrected it. But as I said, we got rid of the city manager first. In fact, we investigated areas that were not working efficiently, and we've changed them. We're now in our 5th year of no new tax revenue. On the other hand, I see the board continue to act as a rubber stamp for the chief appraiser. It's way past time for the board to step up and act as the oversight that you were elected to be. I'm very disappointed that any government organization is operating as TAD is. I stand here ready to help in any possible way to help improve TAD's operation. I have experience in helping organizations change and resolve problems, and I was very good at it. Please let me know if there's any way I can help. Thank you very much for your time.
Next, we have Mr. David Hafer. And would you give us your name and address before you speak?
Sure. I've not heard you ask anyone else for that.
Oh.
569 Sterling Drive in Benbrook.
Okay, thank you.
Several years ago, my property experienced an over 30% increase in market value in 1 year. That left me with having more than 3 years of increased appraisal value coming in the following years. I did research. I looked at comps that I could get access to, recent sales of similar homes in my neighborhood of similar size, age, and construction. I came and I protested, and I came and I did the protest on my own. The appraiser in the appraisal board hearing used comps located miles away from my home, not in the same city. I brought multiple copies of my research and presented those in the hearing. The members of the review board didn't consider the evidence I presented, quickly dismissed me. I left feeling that no evidence that I would have brought would have had made a difference. I didn't have a chance. A half-day of vacation wasted to come here. I encountered a condescending attitude and a corporate culture that considers individual taxpayers of Tarrant County as merely a means to an end, a nuisance and inconvenience. Next year, I tried the online protest. I had one chance to guess what the secret number the appraisal district would accept as an alternative market value. I did research and submitted what I considered was a reasonable value, but alas, again, a wasted effort. Next, I tried one of the businesses that handles protests for a fee. After 2 years, I saw that was a racket. Then I saw a news story about Chandler Crouch's efforts to try to help citizens get a fair shake from the appraisal district without charging them anything. It sounded too good to be true, but I thought it's worth a try. But after my previous experiences, I thought, what could I lose? It was true. Look at how many clients he has now. The tax protest industry must really be upset with him as a competitor. The first time I observed a board meeting was several months ago. Someone had taken a video with a personal device and posted it online. I was appalled at what I observed. Mr. Crouch was addressing the board, but all but one of you could not have appeared more disinterested. The chair was more interested in paying attention to the timer instead of listening to what Mr. Crouch had to say. Last month, I was able to attend this meeting in person for the first time because you met on a holiday. I left disappointed in how this board operates. The chair often interrupted someone speaking, sometimes to inform them of the time remaining. I was disturbed by what I saw, so much so that I had to return today. I feel so strongly about the dysfunction of this agency that I'm taking a half a day off of vacation today to come and address the board. For too long, this board has operated in the shadows with minimal accountability, meeting at a time when most who work are not able to attend, and until recently without video recording of your meetings and little media coverage. I have served as an elected official for 7 years in the county, but I will not mention that position or entity because I am not here in an official capacity. I say that because therein is one of the main issues that has been before this board that the board has not resolved, the proper use of official capacity. Prior to the office I now hold, I served for 7 years appointed to a municipal board. And I've worked in various levels of government for over 40 years. So I have some firsthand knowledge of how a governing board should operate and the support that it should expect to receive from its staff. Mr. Armstrong misused his official position in acts of personal retribution against a citizen. He did not have the authority to file those complaints in his official capacity and thus abused his office for a personal vendetta. For a senior management official to use the weight of a governmental agency against a citizen is inexcusable. This is an example of official misconduct of a very serious nature. Another issue that is inexcusable is the apparent cover-up that continues regarding the issues of official misconduct related to the complaints filed by Mr. Crouch. The chief appraiser must have been aware of the state law prohibiting an official of the appraisal district serving in an official capacity of a taxing entity it serves. And he must have been aware that Mr. Armstrong was clearly in violation of state law. I'm nearly out of time and I can't really finish what I have here, but I want to point out to you that Mr. Diot asked at the last meeting to have to at least have on the agenda for the board to consider the report that was done by the investigation. All of you sat there mute, and not one of you would agree with him to at least place on the agenda, even if you disagreed with him. You could have at least deliberated it. You owe that to the public. After a detailed rationale by Mr. Diot on why a discussion regarding the report would not or should be on the agenda, there's no mention of this request in the minutes for your meeting today. Why is that? That's a significant item that was discussed in your meeting. So I'm going to suggest to you that that item be removed from your consent agenda, the minutes of the last meeting, and that you consider those separately and you correct those minutes to reflect what Mr. Diot had asked the board to do in this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Hafer. Do you need to respond to him later time? Okay. Mr. Crouch. And you can give us your name and your address.
Sure.
That's just a policy.
Chandler Crouch, 4648 Simpkin Trail, Fort Worth, Texas. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just want to mention real quick that the JD, our officer that's been here for ever since I can remember showing up, this is public knowledge. It was in the news, so I feel comfortable saying it, but he was in a car wreck, and I just want to say our thoughts and prayers with him.
Thank you.
He's always been fair and whatever. I just hate to see him in that position. But yeah, after the last meeting, it just wow, it just really started to sink in, everything going on, and it's disturbed me quite a bit. I've started reflecting on everything going on. I've got transcripts from just about every meeting that happens from May 13th until now. And I went back to the May 13th meeting when I stood right here, and nobody except for me, Frank Hill, and that was it, and Armstrong, well, nobody outside this small group knew what was going on. And I stood here and said, guys, there's an issue, it's serious, it's gonna come out, and I need you to call me. Nobody called me. That has been glossed over. I've heard innuendo from people on the board about the timing in which I've alerted the public and alerted the media about what's going on. But the issue is that we don't have to just deal with this when all these rules are in place where I only have 3 minutes left to speak. We can actually get to the bottom of things, where people are accusing me of all sorts of things and I don't get the chance to respond. We can actually have a dialogue to get to the bottom of problems. Instead of fighting, we can work to solve problems and get past some of this petty stuff. If there's nothing in that report that I cannot think of a reason, and there may be a reason, but I can't think of it. I cannot think of a reason why you wouldn't be okay releasing that report unless there's something that you're trying to hide, that you're trying to protect, that shows something very ugly going on. If you see the stuff about the Twitter files coming out, if there's a reason, Mr. Pompa, I see a look on your face. If there's a reason why it can't be released, why not just honor the discussion and just talk about why it can't be released? The Twitter file thing that is going on with Elon Musk unveiling all this stuff that happened with the Hunter Biden laptop. And you can see something that is a parallel with what's going on here. The issue why that's such a big story is because they tried so long to keep it under wraps. And the people that were keeping it under wraps are all now having to face what's going on in the public. It's caused a much bigger issue. Them trying to keep all this stuff secret just made it huge. The longer it takes for the truth to come out, the worse it gets. There's a PR issue going on with that. And the solution to the PR issue is to just let the truth be known. Whenever Mr. Armstrong filed the complaint against me, and now when Mr. Stanley has filed a complaint against me, my first reaction is I'm going to come out with it, and I'm going to tell the world what's in the complaint, the good, bad, and the ugly. You're going to get to see all of my actions and the actions of what they said against me, and I'm going to give my rebuttal so that we can just deal with it, bring the truth out, bring it into the sunlight, and move on past it, okay? And now, I think that there's a possibility that somebody could say, well, the 5-page summary report has everything in it that you might need to see. Here's the problem that I have with that. If you read the 5-page summary, and I emailed each of you a little rebuttal video last night. I don't expect that you have seen it this far because I didn't give you very long to look at it. But that report was issued after the letter from my attorney, after the investigation from the TDLR investigator did a full investigation on the issue, and he said there is no evidence of a violation. But yet, that summary report was issued with all sorts of innuendo saying that there's potential fraud and all these things, all these violations that could still have, like he created the doubt in that report saying there could still be a violation. It's just obvious that his opinion is worthless in this. The TDLR investigator, which nobody's had contact with, he has the actual verdict of the actual investigation. It says there's no evidence. So let's just see the facts behind his summary report and see the truth so that we can all make up our mind on what's going on. If you don't have anything to hide, then come out with it. Let the truth set you free. Be a leader. Stand up. Who's supposed to be fighting for us here? We have to depend on you guys to do this. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Next is Mr. Daniel Bennett.
Good morning. You want my address too?
Sure.
So don't start the clock until I give it to you. Can you restart the clock, please?
Okay.
408 Pemberton, West Sullivan, Texas. The first thing I'd like to say to the police officer standing in the room, after JD got hit by the car, they have a GoFundMe page for his medical expenses. And I want this board to know Manuel Mata gave money. Did you, or do you know about it? I hope you'll donate after today. All right, let's get down to business. In December, Mr. Law released a report. Now, this is for you, Mr. Jordan. This is December of 2021. He released a report called Response to Senator Nelson's Letter. This response was to refute the very data given to Mr. Dion by Mr. Law. Mr. Law sent this report to Senator Nelson's office without the board approval. The district's report was directly refuting Mr. Dion's information that was provided to Nelson's Finance Committee, provided to him by Mr. Law. So the district actually refuted their own data in a response letter. Now, you can't make this stuff up. The work on this response was feverishly started in 2020, soon after Mr. Dion went before Jay Nelson's committee. And it was started by the first cousin of Mr. Law, David Law, whom you do not know, or you may know. He retired in February. And he worked on it all year, 10 months, supposedly. So let's focus on the timely release of the response to Jay Nelson's office and to this board. It was December 9th of 2020. The next meeting date was December 11th. Not time for the board to review it or even know what had happened. And that Mr. Law subverted this board by sending information to Nelson's office unrestricted, without board approval, to refute the very data that he provided Mr. Dion. You can't make this stuff up. Let's move on. They released the Todd Clark's report a day and a half before the board meeting. Any similarities? Any similarities? Did you have time to read it before that meeting? You know that letter for Jay Nelson was refused to be spoken about. Michael O'Donnell said, you can't speak about this letter. You weren't here, Ms. Martinez, Mr. Pompey, you weren't here. I was. I watched it all. And then when you two got on this board, it was provided to you, it sounded reasonable, no audit of software. Now, what's happening in Mr. Clark's report? A day and a half before you guys meet. Don't have time to read it. Any similarities? All right, let's go on. At the last meeting, Mr. Lasada addressed the AOA stating, this issue is relevant, but not at all new. Were you all here to see that? Do you remember his testimony? Mr. Lasada pointed out that he was a witness to this years ago and has been going on for a long time. It's a staff problem then, and it is a staff problem now. He was on a panel in 2010, and he saw the AOA issues. This is not dropped in Mr. Chandler's lap. This has been going on for years. It's a staff problem. So I beg the question, and maybe Mr. Stanley and Mr. O'Day can answer this question. Where were they 7 years ago when these AOA issues were happening? Did they come to the board then? But they're here today. All right, these are the same two individuals who were allowed to enter a small room on Mr. Law's behest or Ms. Wildman's behest while 400 people stood outside, Mr. Dobson being one of them. But Mr. O'Day and Mr. Stanley get to walk into the room, have cookies and cake, and sit down in a pleasant atmosphere. While Mr. Dobson stood outside, I had to get him a chair. All right. They all peered through the glass. They were on the outside. It reminds me of that movie I saw, D'Souza, where that guy looked in Hillary's eating. I was standing outside with her and says, we could be in there. It's just horrible. The optics are terrible. The optics of this situation are terrible. So the question is not with Mr. Krause. The question is when is staff going to fix this issues under Mr. Law's tenure? That's the question that we need to discuss today. And we need to discuss that before you review and give him any type of additional compensation. Thank you.
Mr. Tracy Stanley, is it? Oh, yeah, there you are, Mr. Stanley. Could you give us, I don't believe you filled this out completely. Would you give us your address and your name and address as you start?
I saw two things on the agenda that I would like to talk about. Number one, I didn't see anything about the funding of getting this website back online. I think there's 24 or 30 people in here that would donate $10 to get that thing working again. It's just a real mess for us. The website I'm talking about, when are we gonna get that back online? That is like it used to be, and not just 3 or 4 items that we come in and try to search by. We can't use agent, you know, I don't know how to get to the agent anymore. We can't search by, if I have to go to the inactive map, find an account number, come back to look up a search by account number. I don't get a full property report. It's a handicap on the public. And I was told that it'd be ready soon. Well, I know that you're scared because of what happened to Dallas. They're still under the ransomware, and maybe that was a good reason to take it down, but we need to know approximately when it's gonna come back up. The second thing, and I'm hoping you cover that in the report. The second thing was the appointment of agent, item 7 on your agenda. I know you have to take the TAD has to accept a digital signature, but they can specify that that digital signature needs to have a certificate on it. There's a couple of vendors out there. I'm an agent, I subscribe to them, and there's a couple of vendors like DocuSign and Adobe Acrobat, and one of them is Blue Light for $240 a year. You have unlimited signatures. It works. You can use it yourself. You can see how easy it is. They'll give you a demo. That needs to be a requirement on digital signatures that are sent in to TAD. They need to have certification. And Blue Light, which is, you know, an off-the-wall, you haven't heard of it, but they're really coming on, will take a picture of whoever signed it. So you not only have a picture, but you also have a digital signature that's certified. And that is what we need to stop the fraudulent signatures on appointments of agents. If it was I'm not chief appraiser, but if I was, I would void every appointment of agent in there that had a digital signature and start over. Because if they're really your client, they won't mind and really respect you for saying, okay, we need to get this right. I don't know if you can do it or not, but that'd be a good fix. That's it.
Okay, and Mr. Stanley, we'll have someone from staff, either Mr. Craig or Mr. Law, get in touch with you about your first issue. Okay? Thank you. Well, I believe that's it. Was there one more? Oh, yes, Mr. O'Day? Yeah, okay, it came late. Jameson O'Day? Yeah. And the reason I asked for you to give your name and address basically is so that everyone knows.
James O'Day, 1200 East Maddox, Fort Worth.
Okay.
So, me and Mr. Stanley have been talking about the TAD website, and the website has been experiencing some issues. For one, it's not anything like that it used to be, so we just want a response to find out if it's going to come back online, and if so, if it's going to be like it used to be, where there's an agent portal on there where we can get our final orders and that kind of thing. So that's one of the big issues that we're having as tax consultants right now, is that we need access to that, because within that lies the evidence that TAD provides to us, so that we can, talk to our clients about their rights to arbitration and things like that. So we'd like to have that as soon as we can, especially before April comes around. So we'd like to just kind of know what's going on there. Mr. Stanley, he also talked about the appointment of agents, and I submit digital signatures as well, and I think that he's right. Any digital signature that does not have an IP address or a way to verify the authenticity of the signature, that all those AOAs need to be canceled. In fact, I have digital signatures that need to be canceled because mine didn't have the IP address, kind of just like Mr. Crouch on his. We didn't have those, the IP addresses to verify authenticity, and I think that it's important. More important for people who sign up for a free service, because you don't know who those people are because you're not taking payment from them. So I think that's important. And I don't think it would be a huge task. I know it's going to be a staff task at the appraisal review board, appraisal district. It's going to be a monumental task to take care of, but I think that they can do it. I think they're well staffed where the appraisal district can do that. So really, that's all I had to say.
Oh, okay,
Right.
thank you. And we'll have staff respond to the website.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Now, is that it? Okay, good. And we'll move on to the action items. Number 6, we have the consent agenda, and I think, does anyone have anything they would like to remove from the consent agenda?
I would like to pull the first on the minutes, the item 1.
On item 1? Okay. Anyone else? Then, okay. We will, could we go ahead and vote on the rest of the consent agenda and then come to that? Okay. So do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda, except for item 1?
Moved.
Moved, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Okay, Mr. Diot, did you want to?
That item?
Uh-huh.
The gentleman pointed out that a significant part of the last meeting was left off, and I do think it would be appropriate to note that that was mentioned under the discussion of future agenda items, that I pointed out that it wasn't, sorry to put my words together here, but it wasn't on the agenda when I had requested to 2 board members that it be on the agenda. Apparently they didn't agree, but that I called for the release of that full report.
Okay. Can we? Okay,
With the addition of that, I'm trusting Jeff Craig's wording. He's furiously writing. We'll give you time if you need it, Jeff. With the addition of that, I would move approval of it as an item.
So just to be clear, to put the comment in there that you had asked for the release of the report and the discussion of future items
Yes.
in the item.
And that it was requested to be on that agenda that day, and it was denied.
Okay. All right, do we need to, I guess we need to vote on that?
And I'll move approval.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, wait, Mr. Jordan.
I think I have no disagreement that it should be on there because it actually took place. There was a request. Since there was so much concern over that, there has been action taken regarding the release of that report, and I think our attorney can speak to that since it's part of the agenda. I think it could be discussed if Mr. Tepper could say what the current status of the release of the report would be.
Absolutely. Following the last board meeting that the Tarrant Appraisal District Board of Directors had, the appraisal district received several open records requests. Oh, I'm so sorry. Am I on?
Yeah, you're on.
Following the last Tarrant Appraisal District Board of Directors meeting, there were several open records requests, or really Public Information Act requests, that were made for the complete report that Mr. Clark had prepared that everybody has been discussing. And in response to that request, I, on behalf of the board and the appraisal district, filed for an Attorney General opinion asking whether or not it was proper and correct for the appraisal district to go ahead and withhold that. The main ground that was in the request for the Attorney General opinion, and the reason that the appraisal district is taking the position that that full report is confidential and should not be released is because that full report contains attorney-client communications and attorney-client work product that is in there. Namely, that particular report does lay out legal risks to the district and a roadmap if somebody wanted to come and bring some sort of legal action. And so that is the confidential and protected information that we've asked for. It also contains some confidential and privileged personnel information, but we have submitted our comments to the Attorney General on that issue. We notified all of the people who had made requests for the information that we were asking for the AG opinion. They also have the opportunity to go ahead and submit their comments to the Attorney General, and at the end of the day, within a relatively short period of time, we ought to have a ruling from the Attorney General as to whether or not the district is proper in going ahead and withholding the release of that information.
Thank you, Mr. Tepper.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Mr. Tepper, if the board wanted to release the report, they could. Is that correct? It's not illegal for the board to release the report.
The privileges and the confidences that are in that report are privileges and confidential provisions that belong to the district, which is ultimately this board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. I guess we're down now to,
Just, we need a vote.
oh.
We have a motion in a second.
We talked about all this other stuff there. All right.
Can I make a comment about the report, since we're talking about the report? And I think, you know, we have some city council people and some elected officials here. I do believe that the summary that we provided you guys to the public has the merits of the finding, what the attorneys found. The concern with the report is that it was, as a board, we have to have the ability to communicate with our attorneys, and our attorneys have the ability to communicate with us in matters regarding the district without really anything being held back, right? And so every city has, you know, an attorney. Every district has an attorney, and they have to be able to communicate in a way that it's privileged. It's attorney and client privilege. And so, you know, I think that releasing that report, first of all, would set a precedent. Second, again, then that's going to really prevent our communication with our attorneys moving forward from being what it needs to be between attorneys and clients. So that's my only concern with it. There's nothing, I think, else in there. If eventually it comes out, I don't have a concern about it. If the Attorney General says it has to come out, well, I don't have a concern about it. But I think we do have to protect the attorney-client privilege between our attorneys and the district. The summary that he created was specifically to be released, and it had all the information relating to the matters that he was investigating in it. So I don't have a concern if the Attorney General says we have to release it, but I think it is important to maintain that attorney-client privilege between the district and our attorney.
I think going forward, I agree with you.
Madam Chairman, if I could, I agree, and I've got to say I've read Mr. Tepper's response. It's a pretty solid legal response. I took a couple of exceptions to it, but I think his work is very good. The reason that report was called for, the reason I called for it was because discussion among the board was prohibited by actions of the chair. And Mr. Pomp is not really worried about the contents. But the reason I want that thing released is so the public can see what goes into the thought processes in some of our decisions. And I don't know if Mr. Pompa, he doesn't see it the same way I do. I think the color of that report would be substantial. So I do think this board is bored. I was advised that the existence of that report is not confidential. I could talk about that. And I realized when I did that, people are going to want to see it. I think you should. The reason I asked for it is because the board was not going to talk about it. And I believe that is tantamount to a cover-up, in this case especially. So I haven't talked about any of the contents of the report with anybody. Funny thing, a reporter halfway through a conversation called on the telephone for a print interview and actually, how can I get a copy of that report? I said, well, it's not released and I'm not going to give it to you. I don't know what you expect. And I thought that was funny, but I guess kudos to that reporter for trying. So the reason we're in this predicament today is because we were not able to talk about it discreetly, which I had requested from Catherine Wildman and from Tony Pompa. And then beyond that, under open meetings, I'm not aware what my limits are, but if I talk to another person, that's a walking quorum, as I understand it, so I can't talk to anybody else. So I have to get a second vote, but I better pick that vote carefully. So in a way, I'm very sorry about all of this happening, but justice is on the line, in my opinion. I think it was right to call for the report's release. And as Mr. Tepper confirmed a few minutes ago, we can vote to release the report if we want to. It's not illegal for us to do that. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, well, I would say, I think that the whole board did agree that we wanted an investigation, an internal investigation. I think we all agreed on that, is that right? When we talked about it, I mean, you kind of indicated you were the only one who wanted it, but I think we all wanted that. It was a concern for everyone. And then I'd agree that, yes, the point that Mr. Pompa made was that our attorney-client protection that would be jeopardized in some way, and moving forward, this could come up again and again. And so that's where I'm coming from. But I do think, yes, we all wanted that report, and we did appreciate the investigation, and I think it did help in our decision-making. Does anyone else have any comments on this?
I guess only one more thing. I mean, if Mr. Diab believes that there's some information that is critical that comes out, we might request Mr. Tepper to look at it with you and say, okay, is this something that can be released? I mean, I think all the material findings were released in the summary.
That's what I thought.
If you believe that there is additional material finding, maybe you could talk to Mr. Tepper and discuss that. Again, the entire report was not written by our attorney for public consumption. It was our attorney writing it for this board, and that has to be protected. You people that are on the city council, you don't understand that. You'll get to understand that when you have an issue like this. You have to have the ability to talk to your attorney, period, end of story. But if you think there's material findings in there that need to be disclosed, that weren't disclosed in the summary that we published, then again, I don't think there's anything else there, but if there's something else, and we haven't talked about those specifics because we're limited in what we can discuss, you know, when we're not out here, but we're discussing it now. So if anybody else wanted to second your motion, they would. Nobody else does, but what I'm saying is there's some material findings in there that you believe need to be published, and talk to Mr. Tepper. If it's, you know, if it's important, then we can publish it. And if it doesn't, you know, violate the attorney-client privilege, you know, disclose any personnel, you know, information that is protected, those kinds of things. But if it's material to the finding of the investigation, which was, you know, what happened with the whole complaint against Ms. Chandler, then, you know, we get that out in the open.
It's a 15-page report, and I'm guessing that 13 or 12 pages of it are going to be available, should be available. So, Mr. Tepper, can you speak to the recommendation? Can we do that?
I mean, the board could choose to release all or part of the report, if that is what the board wanted to do. My recommendation to the board has been to release it because there are attorney-client confidences and attorney-client privilege in there, and there's information that I think is exactly the type of information that goes to the core of what the attorney-client privilege is. That being said, it is a 15-page report, so certainly not every sentence and every paragraph that is in that report is going to contain, sensitive attorney-client communications or personnel-type matters. And so, as Mr. Pompa suggested, if there was a portion of it that the board wanted to release, or there was a specific section that wanted to be released, we could certainly take a look at that. I think that maybe the course of action would be, we have submitted the Attorney General request. If the Attorney General comes back and says we're all wrong, that is a public document that needs to be released, then we're going to be under an obligation by law to release it to the people who requested it, and that will make all of this moot. If the Attorney General agrees with the position that we've taken, that it is a confidential document that can be withheld, I think maybe at that point we could look at it and say, are there some specific aspects of it that we think would benefit the public to go ahead?
I guess what I was suggesting is just add, not necessarily releasing the report or parts of the report, but just pick out the information that you believe that the citizens should know and add that to the summary that was already created, that was specifically written for, public consumption, right? I think that's different. And so we've already created a summary of the report with the findings. Again, if you think there's some things that merit that to be in there as well, then we can add those to the summary report that we've already published.
So to be specific, we asked for a report, actually you did, and I questioned it because I was uncomfortable with what I perceived as the fox watching the hen house. At the June 10th meeting. So the summary that came out, which I moved to release it, if Mr. Tepper and I get together, I don't think that's enough. Because I'm obviously holding a different point of view, and apparently I'm 4-1. I don't know that. I don't mean to say that because I don't know, but I think Chairwoman Catherine Wildman and Tony, Board Member Tony Pompa, are both opposed to releasing a report. I don't know where everybody else is. But if we do something like that, I'm okay with it, but I would like maybe to have another board member who's maybe objective to participate with us, and I'd ask Jungus if he can do that.
We have asked the Attorney General for a ruling, and I think that's appropriate. And having served on the City Council, we have to remember there was action taken by the board that was disciplinary action, and it was based on the findings of the summary in that report. There are conditions under the law that protect individuals, not only employees, but supervisors and others. And all we've asked for is, are we correct in the assumption? And if we hear an opinion back from the Attorney General that says we're correct, then the report doesn't get released. If we hear action back that says it is releasable, then we'll release it. And I think that's, I'm not an attorney, you're not an attorney. We hire an attorney and pay him a pretty good salary to tell us his opinion, and he's given us his opinion.
Well, if that's the case, then
I think
I want if we do something like that.
I call for the question.
Okay.
I was gonna, are we in the middle of a motion?
Yeah,
Which one? Is it the one I made?
the one you made about, I
Okay,
think,
let's
it's been a
do-
long time, but I think it was the one about putting it in the minutes.
Yeah, what I was gonna say, Tony has suggested this
Okay.
for us. I'm gonna second it as a
Okay.
motion, and we'll take a vote. Because I'm not gonna meet with the attorney alone unless the board blesses it. And, I think we should.
I would like to say, I do think if we're going to go ahead and release the portion of the report or parts of the report that have not already been contained within the summary. Probably before we do that, I don't know that y'all can appoint a subcommittee of the board to do that. I'm happy to meet with Mr. Diott and anybody else on the board to go through it, sort of line by line and see if there's something there. But I do think that the final decision as to what, if any part of it is going to be released, would need to be made by, you know, a quorum, a majority voting quorum.
Okay. Well, we have a motion, and a second.
To be clear, right now, we're only voting on the motion to amend the minutes
Yes.
to reflect that Mr. Diott requested
Yes,
that the entire report be released.
right.
Okay.
That's it. All in favor?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, if I could, I noticed Mr. Craig was writing it down. I think we probably, for the motion, ought to have the exact list that wants to be added to the.
Could you read it?
Yeah, I just had written to add Mr. Diott's request to add the release of the report to the minutes in the discussion regarding future items. So,
Okay, is that clear?
Yep.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And I guess we can talk further about, I would kind of like, well, to have the Attorney General. When do you think we will get that opinion?
I forget what you've got a timeline on when to respond, and I cannot recall offhand what that timeline is. 45 days is what I'm being told, and that sounds about right. We submitted it a little bit before Thanksgiving, I think, so I'm not sure what the January meeting is, but I think there's a very good chance that we may have.
In January? Okay, and we have another meeting in January, what?
13th.
13th, I was gonna say, okay. All right. Well, with that being said, can we move on now to the, okay. We're at item B, deliberation and action on amending the percentage required for the contingency reserve account. And, let's see, I've got that here.
One other board member, could be me or anybody else, to meet with
That's
Mr.
not
We
good.
have to get back up.
Okay, good.
If we turn to that page, maybe we can get that.
There, got it? Yeah, these things are, okay, here we go. Here we are. All right, yes, we've had a recommendation that we've only had, reserves for 2 months, and I think staff is recommending 3. I think that 3 is, I could go 4, but anyway, 3, I think would be the minimum that we could do, but I would like to hear your thoughts on those. You need any more information? I mean, I know you all read it. Would you like for Mr. Craig to give you some
Sure,
background on it?
give us some.
Yeah, give us some background.
A little bit more details. I mean, on some of the boards, I think by law, they have to, or some of the entities have to have a minimum reserves.
Oh, yeah.
Is that not the case for us? What is the minimum legally
There's not a
required
legal
for this?
requirement. It comes out, I'll only go into a little bit of history.
Okay.
For a long time in the history of the district, the reserve account was 8%, which is about, I think, 28, 29 days worth of reserve. But years ago, that was raised to 12.5%, which is about a month and a half. And then in 2013, when I was in this role, we increased that to 16.7%, which is the current 2 months of reserve. It really comes down to risk. We, the districts, the board's third-party outside auditor, Patillo, Brown and Hill, we talk to them a lot about financial decisions. We try to talk to them in advance of anything we do, just in case there's any question about it. But one of the things that they've reminded us over the last several years is that the Government Finance Officers Association recommends a bare minimum of 2 months. So that's kind of maybe the minimum threshold. But it really comes down to the risk you're willing to bear. And so for entities like appraisal districts, we don't have the ability to, we don't obviously levy a tax. We don't have the ability to sell bonds. We don't have the ability to issue certificates I'm drawing a blank, certificates of obligation. So we don't have ways to raise funds outside of the funding that we have, the typical funding we have. So that's why we have this contingency reserve for emergency things that might come up. Natural disasters, replacement of, large, HVAC systems and HVAC systems, things like that. So, just to kind of give some context, because of the nature of the work we do, we're very staff intensive. That's really the main resource we have are our people. And so of our budget, about 77% of our budget goes to salaries and benefits. So that is our big expenditure, and that's approximately $1.8 million a month. So just to give you some idea of kind of where that sits. So right now, the auditors have told us they think probably for organizations like us, what they see in other cases is about 3 to 4 months of reserve is probably, reasonable to think about. And so that's why we've come back and recommended that we move to 3. Just to give you an idea of what that would do, if based on this year's budget, we're in the end of this year's budget, currently at 16.7%, that reserve is $4.4 million. If we move to 25%, which would be the 3 months, that reserve would move to $6.6 million. In 2023, and that would be a $2.2 million increase in the reserve. In 2023, because the budget is a little bit higher, it's slightly different. Right, the 16.7% would be 4.7, and the 25% would be right at $7 million, and so that would be about a $2.3 million increase. And I think my question would be, well, where's that money going to come from? And so we won't have to use unspent dollars to do that. We actually have some unassigned funds, and a little bit of history on that. We get 98%, 97% of our funding comes from the entities and the allocation to the entities, but there is a small portion that we're able to bring in because of fines and penalties and interest that we make on some deposits and some things like that. And so in years past, several years past, boards had asked us to retain that amount with the thought, and I think the initial thought was maybe we would be able to fund an outside review of homestead exemptions. And that was kind of the initial thought at the time, was that if we had those funds in the unassigned, we wouldn't have to go back to the entities and raise our budget. We wouldn't have to go back and ask them for the funding. We'd have that funding in place. But the board 2 years ago, when the issue came up about the homestead review, I know Mr. Diaz was on that board, and probably everybody but Mr. Jordan was on that board. The board decided not to do that. And so we've kind of gone a different direction in there. We've been able to get some additional resources for staff. We've been able to do some things to beef up our review of homesteads internally. And so that money is there, and I think it needs to be used for something, and this seems to be a good use of it, would be to use that money to fund this added contingency. So that's where we believe that the funding would come from. And so that's why we're coming back and recommending that we go to at least the 3 months of reserve, just to give us, give you as a board some security that if something happened here, we were able to operate for really 90 days on that funding.
Okay.
Any questions?
I was just going to say, I've heard it expressed in a number of days of operations, and I've also heard it expressed in percentage. In 3 months is a 25% backup, anything between 10 and 30, in some cases 60. I think 25% is prudent. It's a conservative way to go. Move that we approve.
Okay. And had a second from Mr. Martinez.
Just one more comment. I'm good with the 3. I hope that we begin to move towards 4 months, because the range was 3 to 4. I'd rather be on the side of being more prepared for an emergency or something like that. So, maybe in a year or 2 we can move to 4 years. But I think for now it's prudent to do the 3 years.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor? Did you have something you wanted to say, Mr. Young?
Yes, but that's fine. We don't need to talk about it.
Okay, you're going to keep it a secret.
It was a small thing.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All righty. We are now down to the deliberation and action on options for committing unspent funds from the 2022 budget. Isn't that wonderful? We have,
They would give it to the board.
Should.
I'm going to advise against that.
Take your advice, Mr. Attorney.
Good idea. I think the board would agree. No.
Would you like me to explain this one?
Yes, I
Okay.
would. And give us some.
Yeah, please let me talk about this one with you. So, each year we try to do the best we can to anticipate what we're going to end up with in unspent funds at the end. We always believe there'll be some, just based on the nature of not being able to be fully employed all through the year. And the case right now, November 23rd, our employment was sitting at 205 of the authorized 212, so we were down by 7. That obviously fluctuates during the year, retirements, folks leaving, that sort of thing, and so it's just very difficult to stay at 100% employment all through the year. So what I've done for you to at least show you where we project that these savings will come from will be on the chart here on the first page. And the lion's share of this projection, right now we're projecting about $2.3 million would be unspent at the end of the year. The lion's share of that is going to be in personnel dollars based on this position. So salaries, what we budget for overtime pay, which we were under, which I think is probably a good thing. Medical premiums. You approved on the consent agenda the renewal of our insurance, so we didn't really have the discussion, but one of the things I wanted to remind you guys, last year we kind of changed gears, and where we had always gone out with RFPs and had to negotiate with different providers, we had an opportunity to go with the Texas Association of Counties and get our insurance through that larger pool, which was a real benefit to us, and we saw a big reduction in our premiums starting last year, which then we ended up budgeting less money in the budget for 2023 for that. But the effect of that was we were under budget by about $1,900 per person or per employee per month. So we had a big savings in medical premiums, about $480,000, just based on being able to kind of shift our provider or the way we were providing our insurance. And then there's a related, pension is related directly to salary. So the big portion of it was there. We had some savings in postage and mailing services. We had really big savings in the I'd say big savings, a couple $100,000 in ARB board fees because we had, number one, fewer hearings, but because of the ability to go to the possibility of single-member ARB panels, then that reduced the number of ARB members that it required to have the number of hearings that they had. So we had some savings there. And then so a little bit in travel and training and other professional services. So again, about $2.3 million. We believe there's probably about 4 things that we can do with the funds, these unspent funds. The first one we did make a recommendation on, and that is of the committed funds we have a committed fund for technology. We use that fund for kind of unknown technology expenses. We use it at times where we remove some things from the budget and intend to use the technology fund to fund those rather than putting that into the budget for the entities to fund, so that's a savings for them. There's a cap on that fund of $250,000. Right now we're sitting at $196,000, so $53,750 would bring that up to the cap. So we think that's just a reasonable thing to make sure that technology fund is funded. And I would kind of go down in order that I've gone through in the item here. The next item would be to transfer some of this money to our retirement unfunded liabilities committed fund. Right now there's no money in that fund. That fund obviously is used to reduce liabilities on our pension, but one of the big things that we do with that is that we try to put funds in that fund to pay for a cost of living increase that we might give our retirees so that it doesn't affect our rate. We're paying for it in advance instead of putting it on the credit card, in other words. And so just wanted to kind of let you know where our retirees are in that situation. There's no automatic cost of living increase through the Texas County and District Retirement System. There's nothing that automatically happens. So that has to be done by board action. We have to decide to do something for our retirees. And then there's kind of a complication that if we give our retirees cost of living increases in successive years, one year after the other, then under the GASB regulations, we get treated as a repeating COLA, kind of a repeating COLA offender. The result of that really, though, is that it hits our books as a liability. It assumes that you're going to give cost of living increases every year, And so then that liability increases or decreases the funding, so there's kind of a domino effect there. So to avoid that, we can only give our retirees a cost of living increase every third year. And so that's what the board has done in the past. The last two COLAs were granted in 2018 and 2021. And I just noted for you the COLAs that were given to our retirees in 2018. It was a 1% cost of living increase, in 2021 a 2%. And the board did provide the funds to pay for both those up front, so we didn't have that liability hit us. Our employees do not participate in Social Security. I think we've talked about that several times. But just to give sort of a reference or some context here, Social Security gives cost of living increases almost every year, if not every year, and there's a long history of that. But just in the same time frame from 2018 to 2021 or to current, I just gave you what the COLA increases were for Social Security recipients. So 2018, 2.8, and you can see then 2022 was obviously, because of the effect of inflation, 8.7%. 2021, they got 5.9. They also, Social Security bases theirs on consumer price index as well. So that's kind of the difference there. But anyway, that hopefully puts in context where our retirees are. So if we were to pre-fund the COLA for the next time they can get it, they can have one in 2024, but we've got to pay for it in 2023 for them to get it in 2024. So right now there's no funding in that reserve fund, that committed fund. That's the fund that you control the movement in and out of it. We did ask TCDRS if they could give us some estimates of what potential cost of living increases would cost. Obviously, if we tried to do one as a percent of CPI, as a percent of the consumer price index, it's more expensive to do that. 100% of CPI is $6.3 million. Obviously, we're not talking about that amount of funds here, but 1%, 2%, and 5% would be anywhere from $420,000 up to $2.1 million for a 5% COLA. This is one where I'm semi-punting. I've left the blank there for us to decide, you know, what. Well, we obviously want your guidance on this, but this would be one of the options that we would have for these unspent funds. And then if I could just kind of briefly give you the next option on the next page, this is what the board traditionally does, is the board has over time made additional payments to TCDRS just to reduce our overall liability. Right now, because of what this board has done in the past couple of years, we're in pretty good shape. We're funded at 97.2, and for me, that's great because I know when I kind of came into some responsibility for this, we were funded at about 84%, 83%, something like that. So I'm very appreciative to past boards for working on this issue with us. The liability, our total accrued liability right now is $2.8 million, so we're in pretty good shape. But I put a note in here. In 2021, we got notified by TCDRS because of activity in the stock market and the market portion of our returns that we probably would have a substantial hit. They try to smooth these hits out to everybody, but they did make that note to us. I think if anyone's been aware of what's been going on in the market the last, 6 to 12 months, we likely will get some similar, probably note from the TCDRS going forward that they expect that to happen. So anything that we would pay just towards the liability here would just help us maintain our current rate that we contribute. Our budget for this year, we contribute 14%. To give you a little context on that, with our neighbor in Dallas, they pay about 21% on their folks. So I feel like we've done a really good job of managing our pension plan. But that would be the other option as far as committing money. So that part of it would be the commitment of funds. If we don't, the fourth option is really not a fourth option as much as the fallback. If we end up with unspent funds at the end of the year that we've not either spent, obviously, or committed to one of these funds, then the option in the code is that we credit the tax entities towards their 2023 payments or refund. We've refunded in the past, but really what the code indicates is that we should be crediting a payment, crediting their payments going forward. So in any case, if our estimate is a little bit off, we end up with more, whatever the overage is, it's going to be credited back or refunded. And then anything else of this money that we're talking about here that you choose not to commit to something would then get refunded to the entity. So is that a good enough kind of starting point of an explanation? I think we're probably working, I think the number's a pretty good estimate of this $2.3 million here. We're recommending right now that small relative to that $53,000 commitment to the technology fund, but that would still leave us with, $2.25 million to decide what to do between the two things. So that's where we're looking for your guidance on that.
All righty.
Thank you. Can I ask a question about
Sure.
the unfunded liability? What do you see other large districts like ours, their unfunded liability?
Unfunded liability.
You know that? I mean,
There is, just from memory, and please don't hold me to exactly these facts, I know there's a small handful that sit at 100%. I know Smith County has been one that's traditionally been able to get to 100. The problem is when you get to 100, you may not stay there because of things that happen. Most are 90, maybe a little under 90. I think we're probably in that upper group that have been able to get our funding up into upper 90% ratios. Ours has kind of fluctuated over the last few years between 94 and 97 has been the highest we've been at in a while. But I would say probably, the larger ones, I would say probably 90, 92, 89, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Comments?
Well, since
Yeah,
you
go
left the COLA open, there's probably something we need to discuss. I think that I guess my question was to the point that we're sitting pretty good on our TDCRS.
Yeah, on the overall liability.
Probably better than most districts is what I kind of expected to hear. And so I would say that then maybe the bigger share of that after the technology fund would be to fund the cost of living increases for our retirees. As I get closer to a fixed income, I'm more sensitive to that. And, everything's gotten a lot more expensive. I think we all know that. And I think, the retirees, obviously, they don't have any other way, I assume, of increasing the revenue. So I'd support, putting a bigger part of that money into the COLA for next year. Maybe somewhere between the 2% and the 5%.
And just for clarification on these examples I gave you, there could have been a 3%, 4%.
Sure.
You can just sort of interpolate that those numbers would be somewhere between there.
Yeah, I was looking at actually at the 2%, but you guys have any comments on that?
Looking at 2% also, so.
Yeah, that's a big part of, well, but it's not all of it, so. What do you think, Jonas? 2? Anybody, that's just kind of where I was landing to do that, so, okay?
Sure.
Okay, do we need to vote on each one of these?
I think we'll do it as a single motion if we want to fill in the couple of blanks. So that would fill in one, would you say to put a round number maybe of $850,000 in there if that estimate was 841?
And then I guess we're saying the rest of it is going into the TDCRS?
Unfunded liability.
Okay.
Okay.
You want me to give you some math on that?
Yeah, give me some, I can't do that, mate. I'm not.
I'll do that.
Because we've got 5370 and then 850, and then the rest of it would be going to the liability. I guess whatever that is.
Yeah, and
we can write that in.
Anything, if our estimate is conservative, anything beyond that would automatically be in that category that would be refunded or credited. So. Sure.
Do we need to put an amount,
I don't think we'll put an amount in there, but let me give you some numbers for you to consider for the motion.
It looks like it's just, what the staff recommendations are that we've talked about. I guess we can vote on that, right? Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna use round numbers, but if you would be, if you would entertain these numbers then, so, the $53,750 for the committed funds, which we've noted.
Yeah.
And then I put $850,000 towards a cost of living increase into the reserve account for committed funds.
Okay,
And then $1,415,000 as an additional payment towards our unfunded liability with TCDRS. And so if I fill those into the motion, would you like me to read the motion
I think that,
the way that, if those numbers are satisfactory to you?
yes. I think we've got it, but I think,
Okay.
yes, read it in.
I'll read it as a motion, then someone can move, I guess, if that'd be okay. So the motion would be to authorize transfer of $53,750 out of the unspent 2022 funds to the committed fund for technology, and authorize transfer of $850,000 to the committed fund for pension liabilities out of the unspent 2022 funds for future COLA funding, and authorize payment of $1,415,000 out of the unspent 2022 funds to TCDRS to reduce TAD's unfunded liability, and credit or refund to the taxing units allocated in the manner provided by Section 6.06J, all of the unspent 2022 remaining after transfers to the committed funds for technology and pension liability, and payment to TCDRS for liability reduction.
So moved. Second.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all right. Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that work too. We're down to D, deliberation and possible action on adopting a policy governing the filing of complaints by TAD employees with licensing or regulatory agencies. I think we have that in our book.
Next page.
I move that we adopt the policy as presented here.
Okay. Does anybody have anything?
I'll second for discussion.
I just want to say thank you to, I guess, Mr. Tepper wrote this. We had to include federal whistleblower rights, and that's in there.
I did not draft the revised policy. After the last board meeting, I contacted Mr. Clark, who wrote the policy, expressed the concerns, and he's actually the one that drafted it. But from my reading of the policy as presented, it does meet the concerns that were raised last meeting.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any comments or anybody have? Okay, then I'll call for a motion.
You have it.
No, we have
Oh, we
first and
did.
second, so we just need to vote.
Okay, all right, then we're all done. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All opposed? No.
I'm gonna abstain. I'll fix it next meeting.
Okay. Well, and now we're down to the deliberation on the evaluation of the executive. Since he's not here today, I think that I would like to entertain that we table this motion for the next meeting when he can be here. I think it's important that he's here for this meeting. Any other comments? You agree? Okay.
I do have some things that I'd like to, we don't have to make any decisions, but some information that I'd like to put in front of the board in executive session.
Oh. On this issue?
Yes.
You can't wait till he's here and we can do it all at the same time? Is it, you think it's, I mean, I'm just trying to figure it out, why we would
If we
go.
vote to put it off, obviously, we're not going to do it and we'll survive, but, I think it's pretty substantial information, and I'd like the board to hear it in executive session rather than through other means.
So you're saying you want to go into the executive session to discuss personnel issues? And I
Yes.
think it's on there, so we can do it.
Yeah.
I'd agree that I wouldn't want to evaluate Mr. Law without him
No.
present, but if there are issues that you want to discuss with the board, I think that's appropriate.
Okay.
Yeah, regarding that. Yeah.
Everybody agree? Okay. Then, at this time, we will make sure we're down to, yes,
Future
we will,
agenda item?
I think we could hear the rest of the items on the agenda.
okay, and then go in,
Yeah.
yeah, that's, You're right, it's down on number 9, actually.
Well,
Okay.
if that's the case, do we want to move to table that item 7?
Oh.
Is that that's the deliberation on the AOA forms?
No, I guess what we probably should do, no, this is there's 2 items. There's the executive session to talk about the chief appraiser.
Yes.
And then there's an item 7. And I guess what we'll do is go into executive session, and then we'll come out and table it, so we can pick it up at the next meeting. That'd be the appropriate thing to do.
I think that is an appropriate way to do it. Purpose of going into executive session is to discuss the evaluation of the chief appraiser. So
Okay.
Before you table it, that's what you all decide that you want to ultimately do today. It makes sense to have the executive do.
Got it, okay.
Okay, I don't,
Are we still gonna do 7 now? Discussion of the AOA forms?
Yes.
I also think it makes sense, since we've got public here.
Might as well
Yeah.
do 7 and 8.
To do that.
and go.
They're here to hear about, and then just to take it out of order. I think executive session is listed towards the end of the agenda anyway, so I think we skip over the evaluation of the chief appraiser, do the rest of the agenda, and then the board can retire to executive session.
Okay.
And if it wants to come out and table the evaluation after that, that would be the time.
Okay.
okay. Then we will go to the information items next. Is that- Well,
Do we want to?
I thought we were gonna
Well,
skip over that one, but
No,
we're
we're
gonna,
not skipping over 7.
okay.
It's actually this one that we're.
Okay, we're, the deliberate, okay, well then we'll go to discussion items. Discussion regarding the authorization of agent AOA form. Would you like?
Give us a little background on that?
Well, I will.
Yeah.
I'll just have to be honest, this is a bit out of my wheelhouse. I'm, obviously in this position this morning, but I do have some notes, just as kind of general notes maybe, that would at least maybe give you some direction for where discussion would go. And just kind of as just an informational item, a lot of other appraisal districts are apparently also talking about this issue. They've asked the Texas Association of Appraisal Districts to look at these issues involving the AOA process, and so they've assigned that to a subcommittee of the legislative committee. I think actually Jeff Law has been asked to chair that committee, so they're supposed to be meeting on that this Monday by Zoom to have some discussion. So there might be some additional information that could come from those discussions. But really, just for general things, what does the law say about representation of property owners by tax consultants? You have to go to section 1.111, and I've got copies for you guys of some of these documents, so let me get those to you. This is from the tax code, section 1.111, that talks about representation. Property owner may designate a person to act as an agent for the owner for any purpose in connection with the property or the property owner. The designation of an agent must be made in writing and on the form prescribed by the comptroller. The form must be signed by the owner, the property manager authorized by the owner, or another person authorized to act on behalf of the owner. Other than the person being, or other than, the caveat is that has to be other than the person being designated as an agent. The designation may authorize the agent to represent the owner in all property tax matters or in specific property tax matters. The designation does not take effect until a copy of the designation is filed with the appraisal district. The designation of an agent under this section remains in effect until revoked in a written revocation. If an agent chooses to revoke a designation, the agent must send notice of the revocation by certified mail to the property owner. A designation may be made to expire according to its own terms, usually by a certain date. A property owner may not designate more than one agent to represent the property owner. A new designation of an agent in connection with the property revokes any previous designation. A property owner may direct an appraisal district, the ARB, and each taxing unit to deliver all notices, tax bills, orders, and other communications relating to the owner's property to a designated agent. It must be done in writing. The comptroller shall prescribe forms and adopt rules to facilitate compliance with this section. The comptroller shall include on any form used for a single-family residential property the following statement in boldface type. In some cases, you may want to contact your appraisal district or other local taxing units for free information and/or forms concerning your case before designating an agent. An ARB shall accept and consider a motion or protest filed by an agent if an agency authorization is filed at or before the hearing on the motion or protest, and a person may not knowingly make a false entry in or false alteration of a designation of agent form that has been signed as provided by subsection B. So those are all kind of the high points from that document. Let me also give you, just so you'll have it in front of you, what that comptroller's form looks like, because that is that prescribed form that that the code talks about. I think I used one too many, but so that is the form prescribed by the comptroller. So that is the form that is used here and used everywhere else for that matter. So kind of to close this out, just a list of agent responsibilities, the appraisal district's responsibilities, and then the comptroller's responsibilities when it comes to these authorizations of agents. For an agent, agents have the responsibility to properly execute the form with proper signatures and account information with the appraisal district. Property owners can also execute the form and provide it to the appraisal district. Submit all AOA forms timely for proper processing. Some agents will hold AOAs until time of hearing. Some agents file protests on account without being the designated agent. They hope to secure the authorization and to be the agent of record before or at the time of the hearing, which is allowed by law. All those things would fall in those responsibilities of the property tax agent. For appraisal districts, they receive the AOAs, process AOAs, which would include reviewing names, mailing addresses, account numbers to ensure accuracy prior to processing, verify agent information. This is more about large agent firms with multiple offices probably. Any issues we find, we try to contact the agent if time will allow, except with forms that are submitted at the time of the hearing, obviously. TAD's going to step up our communications with agents when issues arise. That's, you know, as a result of these conversations. Update the accounts showing the designation accordingly. And then comptroller's responsibility is to design and maintain that AOA form and establish and maintain the rules for agent process. So that's kind of the basic kind of nuts and bolts, I guess, of the responsibilities. I think, you know, in talking about this prior to this meeting, like I say, this is not really an area of my expertise or you know, specific knowledge, but in talking to Mr. Tepper, there may be some comments that he would want to make regarding kind of the legalities of it. Would that be fair?
Happy to speak, Anthony.
Well, let me jump in because I understand there's a committee that's going to meet. In my review of this, and I've read it, there seem to be a couple of issues. And one, let me start off by asking, this is state code, so therefore it would require the state legislature to amend any of the comments or any of the requirements in here, correct?
That is correct. You all have a section in front of you, the 1.111, and if you look down at subsection G, what it talks about is an appraisal district may not require a person to designate an agent to represent the person in a property tax matter other than is provided by this section. And the reason for that historically has been that the folks who work as tax agents, I think, have felt that historically some appraisal districts have put up additional hoops to make it very difficult for them to go ahead and get designated as agents, either trying to block them from serving as agents or increase their business costs by throwing in a bunch of additional information. And so the agents have gotten the legislature to say, this is a legislative issue, and therefore we want the state legislature to make these rules, and then appraisal districts have to follow them.
And it's my understanding this is the purpose of the meeting that Mr. Rawl will participate in next week.
That's my understanding, yes.
There are a couple of concerns that I would flag that I would ask for the committee to look at. One is, it appears to me that there are different kinds of agents, and this is an omnibus term, that if you want them to be an agent, you check a block. Well, from our limited responsibility, an agent is looking at coming before the review board and asking for a protest. That potentially would be a one-year action, and I don't think it's really explained well in the law, that, because another type of agent would be an accounting firm or a lawyer who is responsible for not only reviewing the taxes on an annual basis, but paying the taxes on an annual basis. So if we're talking protest, to me, that seems to be a term certain and should be asked about in the legislature. Can they clarify and explain to the taxpayer that if they check that box, then that agent is going to get the tax documents every year from now on until it's turned off? And that could be a paper nightmare, which we've seen. The other issue that we've heard from the public is the signature requirement online, and that's showing some proof that that's an actual signature of designation. And those, to me, are gray areas, if you will, that need to be clarified by the state. So that would be my input.
Okay, good point.
So a couple of comments and questions, and I know like in real estate, we have what's called digital link and DocuSign, where, you know, you can see when the signature's been done, what time it's been done, and, you know, talking about the IP addresses too. And of course, you know, like I said, it's probably more of a state issue, but, you know, how there can be fraud anywhere, you know, even with these electronic signatures. So, you know, how can we prevent that? In addition to that, you know, yeah, it is a concern, you know, how there could be some tax agents out there that are doing this, getting, or clients, even though they're not clients. And, you know, what penalties do they face if they find out that it's been falsified? Do you have any idea on that? So, because if you know, slap on the hand, you know, they're going to continue doing it. And, you know, we don't want that to happen, you know. So I'm glad this issue's being taken up, not only here locally, but, you know, at the state level, because since we are going into session, it's probably a perfect time to get this out there, to get it clarified.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Gerald. Mr. Pompa, Mr. Diop?
A couple questions. How many of these forms do we get on an annual basis?
He's got it.
It's funny, I asked that same question.
And then, you know, and such as, I'm guessing we get a lot.
Yeah, I got some numbers yesterday. Currently, there are, as far as accounts that have agent authorizations, currently there's 170,666. They received 52,162 in 2022. So, you know, a lot of these will be changing the agent on an account, so that account number may not go up, it's just a different agent will be on it. Through, let's see, 45,116 active AOAs were received between, to give you a time frame, between April 1st of 2022 through July 31st of 2022. So I think one of the points about this is that our folks get a big volume of these to deal with, but they all come in a very small window of time and right before kind of all the activity happens. So it does put a lot of pressure on the processing part of it. And I think probably it would be fair to say that there's some strategy that goes on in agents maybe filing it as close to the date, thinking that might you know, move back some hearing dates for them. I can't put myself in their shoes, but I'm guessing that there's probably a lot of strategic things that happen with the filing of these things. And I think the biggest problem, if I just look at it, having not dealing with it daily, the fact that you can bring one in at the hearing and that authorization can be in place and change the authorization just minutes before a hearing on a case just kind of makes this a very fluid situation. you know, for the agent representation.
What's the mechanics of processing 40,000 of these AOA forms? What, kind of walk me a little bit through that.
Well, you know, and I would probably be best served to have someone like Vicki come over here and give us that information, but we've got the ARB doesn't have a budget per se, so the appraisal districts are required to fund the operation over there. So one of the things that we're required by code to do is provide a staff, clerical staff, to help them with that, so we do that. And we've got 9 folks over there that help do that. I think of that staff, probably 6 to 9 of them, depending on the time of year, are in that process of just doing that. And I know we also
So it's a manual process, they get the paper and they're entering?
Well, because they're getting 40, 50,000 of them every year, you know, there's just that.
So there's actual data entry by an individual?
Just data entry, yeah, and I know at times we have to enlist some help from some other clerical staff in other departments, and, you know, you prefer not to do that, but we gotta have the help, and sometimes they're not as familiar, they're, you know, kind of having to train them, and I know occasionally they, you know, there's humans doing that, so there's mistakes that get made. Hopefully, and I don't think it turns out to be a large number. We know there's some that happen, and we fix those as quickly as we can.
And there's no mechanism when there's a change of agent that goes into the system, there's no mechanism to verify that with the taxpayer, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if that may be, you know, I can't go into most of my accounts and do anything without getting an email, hey, this change was made to your account online. If it's you, then don't worry about it. If it's not you, then give us a call or send us a message or something like that. I wonder if, as we get into this, because that seems to be the issue, is that sometimes individual taxpayers don't even know that they changed their agent, even though they're required to have a signature. Maybe they forgot, whatever. But that may be a good little just extra step to take, that if there's a change of agent, we should you know, some kind of communication to the individual, say, hey, got a change of agent form. If you did it and you mean to do it, it's fine. If not, then let us know, because something's going on. I just wondered.
I believe there is some communication that, you know, goes at least to agents when your agency has been, you know, removed.
Yeah, but I mean to the individual taxpayer, would probably be ideal.
I know one of the, you know, of course, I was talking to Matthew earlier because I was frantically trying to get up to speed to, you know, to serve in this role this morning. But, you know, one of the things that we talked about was because of the timing of this and just the volume of it, it really is not practical for anyone at any appraisal district to try to be signature police or, you know, to try to be the ones to vet that and validate those things, because it just makes that difficult. It seems to me it would be very difficult for that to take place.
Out of curiosity, and I know you said, you know, we're not the police, but, you know, it's kind of like something changes at the city and say we're going to put it on code compliance. Well, you know, code compliance already has enough to do. So, but whenever we have a tax agent come in here to represent property taxpayer, how does staff know that tax agent is representing them? Is there anything that they bring with them, or how's that worked out?
You know, boy, I'm getting into grounds where I'd say I'm not sure I want to answer that question directly, but I can certainly find that out for you. I think that'd probably be the most prudent thing for me, is to just get the questions you have on things like that and get answers for you, and at least get that back through Jeff when he's back next month. So, yep.
Okay. And any other questions?
I don't want to create work, but what would be interesting, and I don't know that we need to do this, but I'm just thinking out loud. We know how many agents are out there, 100 and whatever. Do we know how many of those agents actually file a protest on an annualized basis? And the only reason I ask that is that theoretically, if there's 100,000 out there and only 20,000 file protests, there are 80,000, or actually 160,000 tax records going to the agent that they'll never use.
Yeah, I need to look at the chief appraiser report, because I think I may have some answers on that. Not exactly here. If you want to hold me to these numbers being exactly right, you know, this past year we had 201,000 protests filed, and I think the number I heard was 160 to 165,000 were agent authorized accounts out of that 201,000, and that probably gives you a number at least kind of in the ballpark of what you're looking for, right? If you don't hold me to that being the
Yeah.
exactly accurate number.
I'm just thinking there could be paper going out in the mail out of Ms. Burgess's office that didn't need to go out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I'm assuming that, because this is not just a local problem, it's a problem across the state, that these guys that are meeting probably have these same issues, and probably issues like the electronic signature thing that's come up today, I'm guessing will be on their agenda. Probably after they hear this meeting, they'll add that to their agenda, if it wasn't on there maybe, but.
I feel comfortable that our concerns have been heard, and I would ask that when Mr. Law finishes his committee report, he report back to us as to what they are asking the state to do.
Certainly.
I think in addition to that, if we could, not only know what the committee finds out and takes to the state, is the committee's going to hear it, at the state level. If we could know when those committee dates are, when they're going to put it on.
Well, and this is a committee of the Texas Association of Appraisal Districts, so this would be the legislative committee would be the ones who would be involved in maybe any potential legislation.
Right,
but, yeah,
to that point, definitely.
And Jeff's on that committee. He could answer that question much better than I could, but, yeah.
Yeah, maybe even if we didn't have the exact date, we could
Yeah.
get a copy of the
Right.
hearing
Yeah.
and what was going on, what they're presenting. Okay, that was good. And also, I will, Mr. Crouch had asked to speak on this item. Did you have a comment?
Yes, ma'am. May I approach the podium?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I was just gonna, this is the kind of stuff I love talking about, because we can actually solve some problems that affect a lot of people, so I appreciate you recognizing. There are a handful of issues, and we've identified a handful of them. One of them is just verifying that the signature was in fact a legitimate signature. And because of some of the issues we cited today, it's really difficult to be the signature police, and then they have to accept forms in physical form and email, all this stuff. One of the things that Mr. Pompa suggested, I think would take care of a lot, would just be a notification system that whenever an agency relationship changed, everybody involved would get notified, the agents and the owner, and that would solve a big problem, because then we can kind of self-police. Another thing is, what Mr. Jordan was bringing up is just how the notices are sent to which people and the different roles that different agents could play. The appraisal district does a good job. If you look inside their system, they have, in each agency relationship, they have what authorization each owner has granted to that agent as far as the different types of authority that could be given to the agent, and also the different types of notices that that agent is allowed to receive. The problem is that the current form, which is the form I believe you probably have sitting in front of you, the top right-hand corner, it's like 50-162 is the name of the form. Well, if you were to Google and find form 50-241, you would see a form that more specifically, it's not perfect, and I hesitated using it, but it's a lot more in line with what the appraisal district or the appraisal review board uses, and it allows you to identify which exact forms and more specific authorities that owner is granting to the agent. I actually emailed the comptroller and said, hey, I want to re-sign all my AOAs, and I want to make sure to communicate with the appraisal district what authorizations are being granted, and I said, what about this form 241? And it took them a long time to get back to me. They said they researched it, and they said they don't like using that form for whatever reason. It looks like a great form, but there's some discretion that the appraisal district gets to use in how they process these forms and how they identify those permissions. And I was just wondering if it's possible to amend those things, by hand maybe, or just note them. Anyway, that's another topic. And then one final topic. If you don't want,
No, go ahead.
Okay, one final topic that creates a lot of confusion, and then I've got a solution, and I'll be quiet unless you have questions, is just the difficulty involved in when multiple people file a protest on the same property and this agency relationship is changing so close to the hearing date. And so close to the protest deadline. You have all these little dynamics that are going on. It causes a lot of problems. I think it's a very difficult logistical thing to deal with, but that's a source of a bunch of problems that I think needs some attention. I think it would sort out a lot of issues. And the final thing I'll say, which should just be a solution, in addition to the notification system that Mr. Pompa brought up, there's a great idea, would be, I'm just one guy, granted, I have more of these than anybody else, but there are so many agents that have experiences from other counties and have been around forever. Mr. Dunson is a tax agent, he's been around forever. And he's seen it all. He's very in tune with what the legislature is doing as well. And Mr. Will Wiggins used to work at an appraisal district. Some of the insight that could be gained from maybe a workshop meeting with some of these agents to just say, hey, how's it done elsewhere? And then also the feedback from the Texas Association of Appraisal Districts, I think is great too, because the solutions are out there, but I think it's great that y'all are taking the issue to try and improve the system. And I'll stand by for questions, or I'll take my seat.
Thank you.
Okay.
I will note, I had a copy of that other form too. The difference in these two forms, just looking at them, is that 241 is only for single-family residential right now. And from what and I'm like you, I didn't get a complete story on why, but I've understood this may have related to a specific situation that happened several years ago. The O'Connor Agency out of Harris County, Houston, is the one that, if we get any of these, we get from them, and that's what they use. But I don't know. This is a question for the comptroller's office, I would imagine.
Yeah, they told me, because I've actually enjoyed a cooperative relationship here, and so me and Ms. Wilkie and Mr. Law were talking about just logistically, objectively, how would it best be facilitated for me to get all of my AOAs re-signed, because that's one thing I want to do. And so I approached the comptroller about that form, and they said basically just don't use it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to go disagree here.
Yeah.
But it's a great form. I think it solves some of the issues that that Mr. Jungus is bringing up. I think it's a step in the right direction. And just I can't put my finger on a solution, but I think it's good to be part of the conversation.
Okay, I think, Mr. Dion.
I have three questions, and I'm going to start with my third one. When somebody shows up at a hearing, and let's say two tax agents, which I've heard has happened, and Mr. Lasada and I have spent an extensive amount of time talking with each other offline about this, because he was on the ARB, and he saw this kind of thing the whole time he was on there, and it existed when he started. Who makes the decision? My understanding is the ARB, the TAD itself shouldn't be ruling on the AOAs, but the judge essentially of the panel is supposed to decide that. Is that true? And I'm going to ask that question to you, but if Jeff can enlighten, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So what happens is we think of it different here in Tarrant County because we have so many protest hearings. But if you were to go to a small county and somebody was to do their appraisal review board hearing, it would look a lot like a city council meeting or a board like this, and then this one council hears all the protests. So then you'd have a chairperson who conducts the meeting. Same thing happens here. It's just that you have a 3-person panel or maybe a 1-person panel instead of a 5-person panel. And so the chairperson gets to rule the meeting, that their decisions are basically, they'll call for a vote or they'll make decisions. So oftentimes what happens is the chairperson will call somebody in the back office at the ARB and just say, hey, we have a question about this AOA issue. We've looked in the system and we'd like to get your opinion on it. They'll get an opinion and then the chairperson will make a decision. And ultimately they have the authority on what happens in that hearing. Then of course, if the district disagrees with it, before the board decision is ratified, they could provide some objection, or maybe if another tax agent disagrees, then there could be more process until it happens. Usually it happens right there.
Okay. You had experience with this a few years ago at TAD. Can you talk, that all got settled and everybody, the agent that was concerned said he didn't think you did anything wrong. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes.
Because this has been a problem here for a while specifically. We know it's a problem around the state. It's not just here.
Well, there are multiple issues here. One issue, which is kind of the issue that's very, very common, which it involves a lot of people filing their AOA forms last minute or bring it to the hearing, the day of the hearing. That sort of thing is a nonstop problem that occurs to everybody, I think, equally. And I actually did some pretty exhaustive research to look at which agency relationships changed hands and all this stuff. So that's one topic. The other topic I think you're probably referring to, which is a pretty major thing that happened back in 2019, I got a call from another tax agent that said, hey, all my clients or I had a handful of clients saying, you're their tax agent now, and they didn't authorize you to do that, to become their tax agent. And when I was alerted to that, I found that I agreed with them that somebody had forged a whole bunch of these AOA documents, submitted them, assigning me their agent, and which by default would revoke the previous agent. And it's something that was, it was a third party. We don't know who it was. I have some ideas who, but we don't know who it was. That they just forged all these documents, and then I had to work with that other tax agent, and Mr. Law was involved, and I believe Ms. Wilkie was on the email chain at one point, and everybody worked together to resolve that specific issue. The other tax agent, by his admission, got an email where he says, I absolutely don't think you did anything wrong. Thank you for your cooperation. You dealt with it in a very timely manner. And then, I don't know, probably have seen that this Tracy Stanley is no longer in the room, but he dug this whole resolved issue back from 2019 and said, hey, he's filing a complaint on me because of this issue that had nothing to do with him. That's been resolved for several years because he's just trying to help control. Anyway, that's kind of a different topic.
Okay, well, the last thing is, this is a screwed up process, clearly screwed up. And it isn't new, and people have challenged it before, and it resulted at one time in, I think, 2008, an Attorney General's opinion that says it's not even illegal. Are you aware of that opinion?
I am. And so specifically, the Attorney General opinion is pretty technical, and I haven't spent a great deal of time really understanding every line of it, but the gist of it, as well as I understand it, just says basically, if a tax agent wanted to sign on behalf of the owner, even though the form says it needs to be somebody specifically different than the agent, but the Attorney General said if the agent wanted to sign on behalf of the owner, then they could. I did email that to you guys last night. You probably hadn't had time to review it, but it's on one of the links of the resources I sent you. But yeah, that's the Attorney General opinion, and to me that carries a lot of weight.
We obviously need to get it fixed, and I'm thankful that we're dealing with it this way. That's all I have.
Oh, okay.
Just a couple of things, I'm sorry. I'm gonna have these thoughts come in. And I know a lot of times, like in real estate, something goes wrong in real estate and it gets to the federal level, and our congressmen and senators start making decisions that aren't in real estate and totally don't have a clue. And of course, this may not help out any, but an idea might be if you're going to change an agent prior to your protest hearing, you have to be notified within 3 days, or, maybe there's a time limit. I don't know if that works or not. Like I said, this is probably more for where we need some tax agents to be a part of this appraisal committee to have their feedback to say, here are the issues we're facing, what can we do about them that way we can get it to where it needs to get to.
I think that's a good point. I think, and I'm sure you are, I'm sure the tax agents association, whatever you're called, I'm sure you're dealing with legislation and legislators to get this fixed, because, I don't think this board can actually fix it. We can participate, but we can't fix it. It's in Austin. And, but I know that most of the time they listen, when we bring things to them that we're facing here. So I think we have some responsibility, but so do you, and you know that. And
I accept and embrace the responsibility.
I know.
I appreciate getting to participate and be a part of the solution.
So does the licensing people for tax agents, do they have any part in this in terms of with the legislature, or is it just like TREC?
Well, first of all, and Mr. Jordan has pointed this out a few times. He feels like a responsibility is to bring some of these stuff to the legislature, and I really appreciate that, because I have been a part of some really small groups of people that are working on the bills that are going to change the system, And when something comes from a group like this, it carries a lot more weight than just a sole tax agent. Another thing, that this digital signature, electronic signature thing has been something that's been part of the legislature and kicked around, and there were strict rules, and they relaxed them. The TDLR group, they deal with 40 different industries, and their job is, I can't imagine how ridiculously difficult that is, but there's some challenges in how they oversee this whole thing. And I would say, as it relates to that group and how the licensing goes, and it relates to this AOA issue, is that I think it's a real problem that you can have a company name that represents an owner as an agent, but yet that company is not licensed at all. And there's very little legal requirement involved in what an agent has to show to prove that they associate with that company. And then you have agents doing all kinds of crazy things to, help each other out and different things. So I think that the property tax is getting to be a bigger issue, bigger industry. We need to probably see some tightening on what names need to be on those forms, how to even verify identification of the agents, and what authorization specifically that owner is giving the agent. If they put a company name on there, but there's another agent in the company that goes to represent them, or even another agent in another company that says, hey, I'll help you out today. It's like these things right now are kind of gray areas, and there's not a law against them, so they're kind of permissible, but it needs to be tightened up. So that great insight to that agency needing to get involved. They do. I don't know how they will, though, as much as they have to deal with. It's a big problem. Ms. Wilkie probably sitting there thinking, I'm tapping on her pain points right now. I can't imagine what she has to deal with in trying to manage this whole thing, but she's a wealth of information for this issue, I would imagine.
Okay.
Madam
Well,
Chair?
yes.
I guess, there's a meeting coming up with Mr. Law and other people in this industry. I just probably would suggest that we ask Mr. Law after that to come, give us some information on it, and maybe put together a small staff committee to really address this and see within what we have, within our control, that we can do to improve the system.
Yeah.
Obviously, some of the things are way above.
We can't do that.
Beyond.
Yeah.
The good thing is, I guess, just as of this last election cycle, almost everybody that ran for any office said they're gonna get rid of property taxes, so.
Yeah.
We don't really have to worry about it much longer.
That's right.
You'll be out of business on that end.
Yeah.
We don't have to do this, so they got the magic bullet, I suppose. None of us are gonna have to pay property taxes, and so we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. They didn't seem to mention where that revenue's coming from.
Exactly, yeah.
Because the state's gotta run.
Sales tax.
Okay.
Matter detail.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. I think we all are aware that this is a problem. I think we will obviously, Mr. Law is going to have, I think, some good information for us when he comes back from that committee, and that they are working on it as your associations are working on it. And good luck getting into the legislature.
Oh, I'm not interested, but thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay.
Madam Chair, on that front, though, the work that they're gonna be doing in the subcommittee does, but we can get something done.
Yes. Well,
This isn't an issue that I'm in my mind going through the various interest groups, and I'm thinking, probably nobody's gonna be opposed to this that much, and so, everything I think they do needs to be geared towards getting a good law written to address this. So I wonder if we can ask our board attorney to kind of keep his ear to the rail on this issue.
Legislation,
so
yeah.
he can help write a bill.
Yeah. Well, yes, I think probably also the association of all the taxing authorities will be together, and it's probably more powerful, really coming, and we're part of that, so that's where I think we can use that as our voice to go through there, too.
I would agree, except if it comes from the wrong people, it's going to naturally get resistance. I think it's better if it comes from the public somehow.
Oh, well.
Strategically.
Well, that's what I thought the tax agents were probably working with the public, too. So I think there will definitely be, on anything on taxation, there's going to be voice from the public. I do believe that and hope so. hope so. They need to be involved. Okay, is there any other discussion on this?
Can I just say one thing?
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to say, out of all the discussion, I appreciate so much the work that Vicki and the folks over there that work with her do in this, not just this process, but all the processes, because I know that's a really stressful at times job, a very demanding job, and they do a great job with that. So I just wanted to give her the opportunity to get a kudo in here for that work.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, well, Mr. Tepper, we're looking to you for some more work on keeping up with, or helping us keep up
I
with
assure
it.
the board, I follow all these issues very carefully.
I know you do.
And there is a lot of different interest groups, including tax agents, appraisal districts, and members of the public who look at these issues regularly. And I don't think it'll just be appraisal districts that want it to be changed. And I think that actually it's probably the tax agent lobby is really probably the group that's going to have the most success in getting these rules written. And they probably should be, because they're really the ones who understand how this works, where the rubber meets the road better than anybody else does.
Good, thank you. Thank you, thank you. All right, then we will move on to information items and report by taxpayer liaison officer. Ms. Mahoney? Oh, there you
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's wrong. That's ARB.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Jacobson.
Ms. Jacobson.
Things are kind of winding down here. We don't get a lot of complaints right now.
Oh, yay.
We didn't have but 8 in October and November, and so far I only have 1 for December moving down the road, so. I also wanted to point out that for this last year, we had 24 resignations on the board, and we had 11 appointments. So this morning, Vicki, Ms. Wilkie gave me copies of all of the applications that have been sent in to date. And what I'll do is I'll review those. I'll make sure that the taxes are paid, because we don't want people on the board that don't pay their taxes. And also the fact that they can serve in the time that we need them to serve.
Oh, yeah.
Especially during the, busiest time, so. And I'll be preparing those to give them to the judge. I will be getting a new judge in January.
Okay.
And Judge Gallagher goes out.
Okay.
And so I'll be working with the new judge. And I will talk to Judge Gallagher, see if he wants to go ahead and look at the ones I've got now, move on, or if he'd prefer to wait for the new judge to do it.
And how many did you say are new, how many new applications do you have?
I didn't count them, a pretty good stack.
Okay. You said there were 24 going off?
No, this was what happened this year.
This year, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Well, thank you for all the work you do, and
You're welcome.
it's very important because that we have someone that can take these issues and bring them to the board. We appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Ms. Jacobson? Okay. The report by ARB Chairman.
I'm Judy Mahoney, the Tarrant Appraisal Review Board Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
And my 6-year term will be over December 31st, 2022. And Judge Gallagher, the administrative judge, has appointed the now Secretary of the ARB, Mrs. Sharp, to the chairman, and Mr. Moore as the secretary. And it's my honor to serve residents of Tarrant County the past 6 years.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
We thank you very much for your work. And it's a big job, and we really do thank you for all you've done, and we welcome the new one. Was it Sharp? Is that Ms. Sharp? Okay, we're looking forward to working with you, and thank you for your work. You got a big job. Yeah, you know that. Both of you. Thank you so much. Okay. Mr. Craig?
I'll do it, yeah. My last official duty today, maybe. So, thank you guys for helping me through this morning. I know Jeff would want to tell you this too, but because we're here at the end of the year in December, I just want to thank all of you for your voluntary service to this board. It's just so critical to us to to have a good, strong board to give us leadership and guidance as we go through the things that we've got to do to provide the work that we provide here. So thank you guys for that. Just to kind of end the year off, to note some of the things that happened this year, we did complete and you approved our biennial reappraisal plan for 23-24. That's always a big step forward. Numbers so far, we've talked about a few of these already. Homestead applications processed so far during the year, over 50,000. Hearings conducted by the ARB, over 33,000, so yeoman's work there. We did have just over 201,000 protests that were filed. We certified again early this year, and that's our goal. That's our critical goal. We also earned, and you guys have heard this several times, but I just want to remind everybody again that we recertified for the Certificate of Excellence in Assessment Administration with the International Association of Assessing Officers. That is the biggest designation that they award. Only 60 government units in the United States and Canada have achieved that award, and only 12 appraisal districts in Texas also have achieved that award. And we got this time a perfect score. I think you noted that day that we got our results on that, and I appreciated that very much. Also, from a financial sense, and I think that's important to you guys, the Government Finance Officers Association always reviews our outside auditor's report and our financial records, and we received again the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. We've received that now for, I think it's the past 34 consecutive years. So I shudder that am I going to be there one of those years when we don't get it? But so far so good that we've continued to do that. And I always give Teresa Stewart a lot of credit for that. She's our Chief Financial Officer. She works so diligently to make sure that all of our records are proper and ready for the auditors when they come in, and I know they appreciate that. We were again voted by our employees, and this actually is one that's kind of heartening to administrators, that anonymously our employees are asked about how they feel about their workplace and the organization, and we were awarded again one of the best companies to work for in Fort Worth in 2022, one of the top 40. So that's, these other awards are great. I think that one, when you're trying to provide benefits for folks, and we talk about, all the things you guys are doing to help us do that, the fact that that's recognized, hopefully, by our employees is really important. And our employees, to kind of give a shout out to them, have been involved in several things this year. Currently, we've got a coat drive going on with the Salvation Army. We'll kind of bring that to a head next week. We'll have our annual Christmas luncheon for our folks. And part of what they do during that time is try to find some worthy causes to kind of give back to the public. And so that's their cause this year. We've had the Carter Blood Drive bus here. We've done some health and wellness screening events for our folks. They always wonder if we're trying to find out things we shouldn't know about them. We have to always, make them understand that we only get the basic details. We get no names and everything. But overall, that helps us in providing insurance for folks to kind of know, and providing other benefits to know that if we need to work on some stress things, we can bring in maybe some folks to help us deal with stress in the workplace and that sort of thing. And that, in the long run, helps us be a more healthy and well organization, and helps us do our job well. We also concluded our annual building-wide cybersecurity training. That's very important. That's going to lead me into, I guess, that one point about website that we were asked to talk about, or I was asked to talk about. We've had 12 in-house appraisal courses during the year. We've got various trainings going on. We have one more training this year. We've got some diversity training scheduled for December 20th, and that will kind of end our year off on the training. The point, I think the guys that wanted to really know about the website have already gone, but our website is slightly different right now. It's not down. It's not been down at all, but we, back a couple of months ago, just doing some internal things, felt like there might be some areas where we had some vulnerabilities, and we wanted to make sure that was not the case. And so we proactively have done some things to do that, but at the same time, we also wanted to provide some better offerings to beef up our offering that we offer through our website. And so we tried to figure out that time of the year that's the best time to do that. When do you do that during the year? It's kind of hard to pick that time, but we felt like kind of this end of the year time was the best time to do it. And basically, we had to kind of break all the connections we had to the current website in order to create this beefed up and even more secure website. And so when they were talking about things they couldn't get to, it's true that on certain days, certain things were not available on that day, but they've been coming back on a really regular basis. Some of the things that they mentioned this morning, I think those things were out there the last time that I looked, but we'll certainly look at that again. But the plan is to kind of have everything back up to where it was before the end of this year. So, you know, their concerns were as they get into the protest season going forward, is that going to be there? And that's been our goal, is to make sure we do this so that's the case to do that. So I don't, our IS director would be far more qualified to talk about this and kind of give you more details on that. But then again, there's a lot of details you don't want to give folks when it comes to security things as well. So hope you guys will understand that. But I think that probably, does that, for you guys, does that cover the website item pretty well?
Mr. Carter, the only thing I would say is that maybe you reach out to those agents, since they do represent thousands of taxpayers, and explain to them where the information that they're looking, if it is indeed there and it's just in a different spot, that you clarify to them, here's where it is, and maybe put something on the website clarifying so that other people, when they log in, they're looking for that. What used to be here is now here. You know, I've seen that on other websites when you do updates, so that they can find the information that they're looking for.
I will note, you know, we had no idea, but I think it was very timely that we decided to kind of make this effort, because in that time, since we had started doing the things we were doing, Dallas obviously is one that's well known, has been compromised with some ransomware. Travis County this past Monday, the same thing happened there. So it's the Travis County Appraisal District. So it's just it's a threat any government entity has. And so we hopefully are taking the steps, or we're trying to take the steps to minimize that, those opportunities.
I'm glad you did bring that up about the website, because I was going to ask about it today, because realtors are having fits right now, so I'll definitely let them know.
Yeah, I know title companies were who we heard from initially, because they were really, they become very reliant on our website. You know, that was not our original intention of having the website to help title companies, but that's what happens out there. And so I know from talking to someone yesterday, they were relieved that whatever it was that they felt like they weren't being able to get to, they can again. So I know as they're bringing these things back up, it's solving some of those problems.
Thank you.
No,
You know what?
I don't need to stay.
You sure? Okay, that's good.
You're begging me, because I.
No, that's okay.
So I should say that concludes my Chief Appraiser's report for today.
Okay,
So thank you guys. But
there were a lot of good positive things on there, and I'm glad that we're now recording so people can watch in live time, that they're able to see this. And I hope that helps too, that there are people out there that wouldn't have known what, you know, about the website unless they were watching today, and hopefully that will help spread the word also through the citizens and people that are interested.
I've heard, and I know this is a interim step that we're in using Facebook Live, but the people on Facebook Live, there's a way to track them and know that they're there. People can walk in this room and sit here and we don't know who they are.
Right.
It's not as anonymous on Facebook, and it probably should be. We should do something to put, and y'all are working on that.
I think hopefully in January that we'll be going live stream.
Yeah.
And you'll just be able to get on. Yeah, Facebook, I know that's.
Yeah, I know we've been talking to the folks at the county about what, and they're changing what they use, and
I knew they were working on it, but I hadn't mentioned it. But you're right. You're right about that.
Okay.
Good point. Anybody else? Okay. Well, then, we are down to the executive session.
Do you want to do the future agenda items now, or after we do the closed executive session?
Oh.
Number 11 is, I don't know if we want to do that now. Probably now would be better. I don't know how long we're going to be back there.
Well, we're coming back in here, so I thought, do you want to do that now, or we can do it when we come back? Because we have to come back in an open session again. As soon as
Part of 11 is to adjourn, and
okay.
Yeah,
just
and
wait
it's,
okay.
yeah, and since we have to come back in open session to
Okay.
close the meeting.
Well,
that we
before
can-
we go back in, I just want to express my gratitude to the leadership and the staff here at Tarrant Appraisal District. It has not been an easy year for you, obviously, and appreciate all the work, the professionalism, all the effort that you guys put into serving the Tarrant County taxpayers. So I'll have a great holiday, Merry Christmas, enjoy your time off, and not before, we'll see you next year.
Yes. I think we all agree, and we're very grateful to the staff that we have. And thank you for sitting in today, and you did a great job. We were sorry that illness is just spreading through the county, through North Texas. But anyway, I want to thank everybody. I do, and Merry Christmas. We're coming back into open session, and I wanted to do that because it's been a good year, but it's been a hard year. And I think we've all learned a lot, and we've grown. So thank you. Now, we will recess into executive session pursuant to the following parts of the Texas Open Meetings Act, Government Code, Chapter 551, for the following purposes: to deliberate on and evaluate the job performance. Well, we're not doing that. We're not doing that.
Well, because that item hasn't been tabled.
It hadn't been tabled yet.
That is still.
We'll have to do that when we come back. Okay.
When you come out, I'll.
To deliberate and evaluate on job performance of the Executive Director and Chief Appraiser. So we will now move into executive session. Thank you all.
Assuming you don't want me in there today.
Huh?
You don't need me in there, right? I shouldn't be in there.
Probably
well,
not, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I prefer.
I'm gonna take 2 minutes.
Yeah.
There's, notification system.
Usually I get coffee,
Can I bring you
pretty good
some?
second. Yeah, sure, I like that.
I'll bring it. You want it plain?
Art and had 5 days
So that was, I think that's what Rich was saying, or no, maybe, Archer. I was saying just to, when a change is made,
I like this.
to send out, but,
Just when it's needed,
yeah.
that would solve probably half of the
I
problem.
think what he's saying is, so we can't limit how far out they can change dates. That what that's saying?
Right.
Yeah, right. So they can change it up to the minute that
We will now come out of executive session and return and open the session. We have one thing to, there were no matters, yes.
There's one matter, about,
Well, first we have to table
That's right.
the evaluation of the,
That's
appraiser.
it. That's the one issue we have. Okay. I will entertain a motion to table, the item, is that 6E? Yes, deliberate and act on evaluation of the executive director, chief appraiser.
Make a motion, we table to deliberate and act on the evaluation of the executive director, chief appraiser until next month.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. That will be on next month's, agenda. Now, let's see, I got to turn over the page. Do we have any future agenda items that someone would like to?
Since I suggested, I think I'll bring it up. I would like for the board to agree to allow Mr. Diot and myself, or any other board member, if somebody else wants to do it, but only two of us to do it really, to review once again the report on the Randy Armstrong investigation, and to decide if there are any other material findings that that need to be shared with the public.
All right, sir.
That's a motion.
I'll make that as a motion.
Well, I don't think, I mean, these are, I don't think we need a motion to put it on, well, I guess we do. We need two. Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It'll be there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, and the next meeting, we are set for January the 13th, 2023.
One last thing, Madam Chair, before we go.
Beg pardon?
One last thing before we go.
Yes.
I want to thank staff because I'd asked for some information a couple of months ago. They did give it to me very quickly, so thank you so much. In addition to that, I watched the last board meeting, and I was very happy that you guys honored our veterans on Veterans Day. Unfortunately, I had to miss because my girlfriend's daughter was graduating from boot camp at that time. So, definitely very proud of her, and then we had to hustle out because the hurricane was coming.
Oh, wow.
So thank you, and I want to just acknowledge the board and thank you guys for that.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Well,
I have one thing I want to say, because of the situation. We have, I have a different view than some others on this, but the biggest strength of this board is, I think everybody's worked hard to maintain collegiality in our relationships, and I personally appreciate it very much.
good. Well, yes, and, well, I just want to thank all the board members, and I'm going to include Mr. Tepper. You've had a lot of work to do for us this year, and Mr. Craig, and all the staff, and how all of you have helped us so much. I really appreciate it. As I said, it's been a little bit of a tough year, different year for TADBOR, and it's really good. And I agree with you that we are all civil. There are some, I think we've all listened and heard some other boards that it's not that civil when there's disagreement. But, you know, that's part of the democracy, is that we're not going to all agree. But that's just because we have different opinions and different views, but that's fine. Anyway, I hope all of you have a very, very merry and blessed Christmas with you and your families. I'm planning on it, and looking forward to 2023. It's going to be a good year, and I hope everybody will have a good end of the year and a good beginning of the year. So thank you very much, all of you, and we stand adjourned.